First Minister, you were born and reared up in Lithgow and West Lothian. Did the folk in known Air and members of your own family speak Scots?
Oh, a huge amount. I mean, the biggest influence on me when I was growing up was my grandfather, my dad's dad. And he was the town plumber in Lithgow. And so he used to take me around all the airts and pairts of Lithgow Toon. And taught me, I got taught history on my grandfather's knee. Well, actually, not my grandfather's knee, actually carrying his plumber's toolkit round after him, toddling along like the sorcerer's apprentice. And that's where I got taught history. That's, and obviously the language in which he spoke was Scots. And therefore my earliest memories are of getting taught Scots history in Scots.
You've served as both an MP and MSP in the North East for many years. Did you ever find that North East Scots, whilst kent as the Doric, was the tongue that meant muckle to folk in the communities that you represented?
Oh, man, a huge amount. I mean, when I went to, I thought I was a fluent Scots speaker, but, and you know, when you go back to your hometown, you immediately revert, when I go back to Lithgow, I revert to Scots Lithgow. But when I went to the North East of Scotland, I mean, I was quite good actually. I was picking up one word in every two. Some folk manage one word in every 10. And it wasn't so much, you know, just the different words, of which there are, of course, you know, when you got used to loons and quinies and things like that quite quickly. But the biggest task was speed. Doric in central Buchan, to even greater extent central Bamshire, you know, somewhere like, I don't know, Gamery Parish, you know, near Gardenston. They deliver Doric at one hell of a speed. So you got to. I remember taking. I was a young candidate, and the party leader Gordon Wilson was coming up on a visit to boost the campaign. You see, we went to Walter Ironside's coal merchant's yard in Gamery, and I was finding Walter was talking to his two loons, and they were talking away. And I also remember Gordon Wilson's face. He wasn't understanding any of it. As I say, I was picking up the occasional word. And they took a picture that day, and recently, Walter died recently, and I was in seeing his widow, and that picture from that day is on a mantelpiece. So it was a memory of the speed of central Bamshire Doric delivery.
You're real kent as a body that likes to make use of Scots words and saws in debates. Have you ever found that you've left folk at Westminster or indeed the Scots Parliament just bombazed by something that you've come away with?
Well, if you Westminster, and to a certain extent the Scots Parliament, but certainly Westminster, you're not allowed to directly insult anyone. I mean, you're not allowed to call somebody a thief, a rogue, a liar. You can think it, but if you say it directly, then you'll be out in your neck. So and the only official languages of Westminster, of course, are English and Norman French. I know that many of them are good at Norman French, so that leaves you English, but the Scots usage is great in terms of insulting people, because you can directly insult people legitimately within the term without getting flung out. So if you call somebody a thief, a rogue or a liar, then you're in dead trouble. If you call them a sleekit scunner,
You get away with it.
You get away with it. And it's brilliant because see, if you do it in the House of Commons, when Hansard writes down everything, they're up in the gallery, so you say, yeah, sleekit scunner, you're talking to the Minister of something important, Minister of Sport. And he knows he's being insulted, but he's not quite sure of the full extent of the insult. So there's a look of total bemusement. And when you do this, the Hansard, the copywriter, send you down a wee note saying, you know, what is sleekit? And you put in Scots usage. Sleekit means slimy, untrustworthy. Send it back up, and then send a note down saying, what is scunner? You know, and so you say Scots usage, scunner, walking emetic. You know, I don't know if there is an English word for scunner, but a walking sick-making thing is about right. And I also remember speaking to Tony Blair when he was Prime Minister, or speaking is probably an understatement, questioning the Prime Minister's questions one day. And I was basically making a contrast between something he'd said in Ireland in the Dáil and something he'd said in the North East of Scotland in the by-election, which the SNP had won. And the Dáil, he said, Ireland was a fantastic example of a small, independent European nation making its way in Europe. And when he was in the northeast of Scotland, he said, it's ridiculous to assume that Scotland could be an independent nation making its way in Europe. And so I said, that's quite a contrast, Prime Minister. Is that why you got a standing ovation in the Dáil and the Bum's Rush in the northeast of Scotland? So I waited a few minutes and I got down from the Hansard writers, what is the Robert Burns Rush? So I sent back a note saying, no, not Scotch usage, American slang.
Do you foresee the comprehension of questions in Ents of Scots lead on the 2011 census as having any particular benefits to the Scots-speaking community?
Well, it's a validation, isn't it? I mean, Scots requires lots of things to be nourished for the future. Certainly, media coverage is by far and away. I think for Scots, like I think for Gaelic, the only way a language can survive and flourish is if it's being communicated through the mass means of communication, and radio and television are overwhelmingly the most important thing for Scots. But there's other things can be done, and one is a sense of validation. Having a census question validates the language. Now, I'm not saying official validation is all that needs to be done, but it's part of what needs to be done. After all, lots of folk survived lots of scalpings at school because they were speaking Scots. So now we're in a stage where the census question asks the question of Scots. Lots of people got belted at school speaking Gaelic. Now we're in a position where Gaelic is recognised and there's now on every signpost in the Highlands and elsewhere actually. So that this is a big difference. Validation is only one part of the story, but nonetheless it's an important part of the story, and having a census question validates the language.
Do you hear any particular words or saws wailed for Scots that you like to use?
Oh, I think my Sleek at Scunner is the ones I would use most. I have a range of Scots, mostly insults, but the thing about Scots is all pervasive. It creeps in all over the place. I found out quite recently, incidentally, that zigzag, which I assumed zigzag was a jazz expression or something. I thought maybe, I always thought zigzag. Actually, zigzag's a Scots word. Zigzag, Burns uses it, for example. Burns comments on how his life has zigzagged. So the 18th century Scots uses zigzag, which I thought was a jazz term from the America in the 1930s. Turns out to be in Scots usage in the 18th century. So it creeps in lots of places, lots of time. But my favourite words are the insults. These are the things of which there is no comparable English whatsoever. The full extent of a Scots insult is a wonder to behold.
So they will come stracht for the heart?
The heart or someone else.
Does any Scots poems or songs come to mind that you would recommend to visitors to the Centre for the Scots Lead?
When my grandfather was taking me around Livgate, he used to take me into the palace, and I don't know if my grandfather was a member of Historic Scotland or whatever body preceded it in these far-off days, Ancient Monuments or whatever it was. But my granddad was a town plumber, so he'd the run of the town. I mean, you have to keep on the right side of the town plumber, or else you wouldn't get your drains fixed. So he always took me into the palace, and he would describe to me the contest between William Dunbar and Kennedy. This is a contest between the Mackers, the poets of the Renaissance court of James IV, and they would have a flighting. Which was a poetic joust to see, not necessarily, I thought when my grandfather told me this at first, this was, as to decisively who would be appointed the Macker, who would be the main man. And I was firmly behind William Dunbar because I'd never heard of Kennedy. But it wasn't like that. It was more a bit of fun. It was a duel, a contest for entertainment purposes. It was a witty exchange. It was poetic university challenge of the 15th century. It was a demonstration of the range and extent of the talent available to Scotland's Renaissance king and to the Scots court. So I was always fascinated by that. So I looked up William Dunbar's stuff and was just amazed. This guy's writing 500 and more years ago, and writes fantastic stuff, absolutely brilliant stuff. And so I would have Timor Mordus, the Lament for the Mackers. I would have that in every Scottish school. I think it's a fantastic, powerful poem, evocative. But my Scot of all time is Robert Burns. He's my Scot of the millennium. He's the main man as far as I'm concerned. So if it was a passage or a stanza, then it would be from A Man's a Man. As in, you see on Burkie called a lord that struts and stares and all that. The hundreds worship at his word. He's but a coof for all that. For all that and all that, his ribbon star and all that. The man of independent mind. He looks and laughs at all that.
First Minister Alex Salmond, mony thank for speaking to the Scots Language Centre today.
A great pleasure.